Hey there, welcome to the Xennial Mindset Show. I'm Marie Mack, born in 1983.
And I'm Enri Pasquino from the crew of 1977. Together, our mission is to unravel the intricate layers of the Xennial mindset, where cherished memories of cassette tapes and rotary phones seamlessly coexist with cutting-edge technology and social media frenzy.
We'll also have some awesome guest Xennials dropping by, bringing their own stories and insights to the table.
So, whether you're a fellow Xennial craving a trip down memory lane, or just curious to know what the Xennial mindset is all about, stick around.
The Xennial Mindset Show is your backstage pass to our world where nostalgia meets innovation. Let's get started. Welcome back, friends. We are here again with a really amazing episode. I'm super stoked about this one because we get to talk about a little bit of nostalgia. Of course, we have Xennial mindset. Most people have to look up what a Xennial is. So if you're not quite sure, look at episode 1. Henry and I go through that. We talk about what that means to us. We talk about how it fits inside of the bigger multiple generations that are out there. But nostalgia is a really big part of this. Like, we think about those past times. We definitely have episodes of nostalgic things, but I thought we would just talk about how we bring nostalgia to our current space and like our current everyday. So we have an amazing guest today. We have Christina here with us. She's has her own business, is the Product Doula, and she also works with Anne-Marie and I very, very closely. So we'll call her probably one of our closest online friends for sure. And Christina has a very unique hobby, we'll say. Christina goes and she visits all kinds of amazing events. We were talking with her a little bit about Xennial mindset, and she was like, oh my God, can you believe blah, 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 blah. And so we were super stoked to have her on and share a little bit about it. But before we get started with Christina, Anne-Marie, you want to tell us like what definition we are using of nostalgia, just so everybody's on the same page?
Yeah, absolutely. So I just went on and I'll be really clear, just Googled it because I didn't want to make up my own definition.
Is there any other way to do it?
No, there isn't. So nostalgia, a sentimental longing or wistful affection for the past. So typically a period or place with happy personal associations. And I think that leads really well into the conversation that we're going to have with Christina, because I do agree. She does some really cool, exciting things. I do think it's because where she lives, she has access to all of these cool, exciting things. So why don't we get her to introduce herself? Christina?
Well, thank you so much for having me, ladies. So everyone, as you know, with the wonderful introduction, I am Christina, the Product Doula. I work with product-based business owners as a certified launch and business strategist. I've been in business for almost 5 years. It's been really fantastic. Marie and Anne-Marie are two of my very close friends in the online space, like, and in real life. I hate saying in the online space, like, although I've never met you in real life, like, we're friends. And it's really funny to me that nostalgia is what we're using as the topic this week, because my father always is like, oh, you're so nostalgic, Christina. And I want to like hit him every time he says it. But at the same time, I'm like, I guess I am a little nostalgic. Like, I enjoy things from the 90s. It's kind of a hobby of mine, as you mentioned. And we'll dive into some of the cool things that I did about being a 90s kid. Well, do you all consider yourselves like 70s, 80s, 90s kids? Because like I look at it and I'm like, I was born in the 80s, but I was raised in the 90s. And that's like my nostalgia. Like, I don't think about like 80s things with the exception of like Care Bears and like Strawberry Shortcake, because those were my girls.
Yes.
But other than that, I'm like, I was born in the 80s, but I was raised in the 90s.
I think that's what we have too. Like every episode we're bringing back something that is helped us be who we are because we live in this generation, right? Like I don't remember what came out on the song in 1983, even though I was born then, but I do remember what happened in 1990. So I think anytime in there, that's what's creating who we are. So definitely this nostalgic part. It's exciting that you're so forward with it and that your dad is just like, oh, you're so nostalgic. I would say that is like a huge compliment, right? Like people who remember that past and who want to bring it forward. And I think, so Christina, just background for people listening, Christina has a son, and I have kids too, and we want that to continue to live forward, right? We have that excitement that's there. And then every time that Anne Marie goes out and she travels somewhere, she does other things, she's doing that because of the things that were happening in the past. And she has nephews and nieces and all kinds of kids that she runs with all the time. And that generation is never going to know it unless we bring that nostalgia forward. Little mini soapbox that I probably get on every single time I think we have an episode. But I think it's super important that we keep those memories alive and in nostalgia. Biggest thing, Christina, we brought you on because we were chatting about this in one of our, probably it was supposed to be a work meeting. But you attend some really super awesome events, and it's probably because of the area that you live in. So you want to tell us a little bit about where you live, and then maybe you could tell us about the latest event that you've attended that's really super cool.
So yeah, I am born and raised in the Bronx, and now I live on Long Island in New York. So the tri-state area does. We have like some really cool activities and things that happen. I went to my first concert when I was 3 years old. Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band at Giant Stadium. We were sitting in the parking lot, and Bruce opened up the floodgates and was like, everyone sitting in the parking lot listening to my concert, run on in. And my parents ran on in with me at 3 years old. 3 years old, got to see the boss, Bruce Springsteen, like quintessential 80s artist, right? Like never ages, amazing guy. And so that I feel like just started kind of like my love for music and pop culture. Like I wouldn't say that I'm like a 90s connoisseur necessarily, but I do love the nostalgia and the pieces of what brought that, like the music, the colors, the clothes, everything about it, which led me to start going to 90s Con. And so for those of you that are listening that don't know what 90s Con is a convention that's held twice a year in the US. There's one in Florida and there's one in Connecticut, so it's close enough to me that we drive to it. And me and my best friend and I have been best friends since we're 5 years old, so 36 years this year. We've been besties. She and I drive to 90s Con, and we go to 90s Con, and 90s Con is a convention celebrating the 90s. So there are celebrities, there are musical artists, they're taking pictures and selfies and giving autographs and talking to their fans, like these people that we've looked up to and grew up with. And then there's like all these activation booths where you can get slimed like you're on Nickelodeon. You can take pictures on the stage of Double Dare. You can buy pins and clothes, and it's just really, really fun. There's a lot of neon happening, and it's just like such a great time. People had Trapper Keepers this year, and I almost bought a Trapper Keeper.
My God, seriously.
Stop it with your nonsense. So it was really great. And, you know, nostalgia, like for me, I was a huge Boy Meets World fan. It was big for me. And then the year my son was born, they had Girl Meets World, which was like a reboot, and I like loved watching it and having my baby and being like, oh my gosh, look at them all grown up, that's me now. And this year the cast of Boy Meets World was there, and I got to meet Mr. Feeney. Mr. Feeney is 98 years old and is so cute in person, and he sits there just like he did at his desk. And I like had tears in my eyes taking a picture with this old man, like as if I was meeting my long lost grandfather, because there's so many words of wisdom that like to this day I still think about. And I'm like, I'll use like a Mr. Feeney line, and my friends will like look at me and they're like, did you just use a line from Boy Meets World? Like, sure did. And so yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell, and like the events, and they're so amazing. And like you said, Marie, like to bring it back, I was just having a talk today with a neighbor at the bus stop, and we were talking about, you know, growing up in the 90s, our parents had like barbecues with like the neighbors or your cousins, and you stayed out in the summertime until the lights went down, or you were running around outside and you came in when the lights went off. And no one does that anymore. Like I live in a fairly nice area, I'd like to say. And we have neighbors. Like I can see my neighbors' houses from where I'm sitting in my office. but I don't know any of their kids. I don't know any of their names until we came to the bus stop. Some people thought I just moved here when my son started school because they had never seen me before, because it's just a different time and place. And so we were laughing. We're like, we're bringing it back this summer. We're having summer barbecues. We're going to go to all the neighbors' houses. We're inviting people out. Kids are playing in the yard. And it's sad to like lose that, because I feel like that's some of like my greatest and fondest memories were like summers with my parents and my cousins and my aunts and neighbors and friends of friends. And you just had a great time and you sat outside and enjoyed it. And we've lost that.
Yeah, and it only comes back up when you can bring something that's nostalgic up to somebody who gets it, right? Like you're sitting at the bus stop, you're bringing up this memory of like, oh, the kids were playing. And that only happens because they understand what that means. Like Anne Marie and I can only have cool conversations on this podcast all the time because we get it. Like we were born in that space. It makes sense to us. And the way that we have worked through this world, this culture, is because we were born at that time. So I love that. Yes, let's like make a movement to anybody that's listening to like do the summer thing. I mean, we're recording this in the summer, so we think about these summer things, but same thing in like the winter time and getting together and singing carols, like walking down the street, like all the fun things that happen that there aren't necessarily happening now. And I feel like it's a different time. Absolutely. Please be safe if this is happening in your world. But at the end of the day, I think it's that connection that people are looking for. And we remember that connection because we were thinking about our past experiences as kids. So I love that. I do have a question about 90s Con, because you told me also that they have candy there. Is it candy and like pop and stuff and soda from I mean, like I'm very confused about how would they keep all of this? I mean, I hope they made new stuff and it's not just from the 90s.
So
did you pay money for old stuff? Or
and it's so funny because like some of the dolls and like the collectibles that they'll have at these events, like Strawberry Shortcake, you know, she's my girl. And so there's like a booth that's all dedicated to Strawberry Shortcake. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love it. There was like a woman dressed up as Strawberry Shortcake. I was in love. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, I could buy those items. And then we got to like the food area and I was like, I don't know how comfortable I am. Like, was that made in 1990 and you've held on to it for that long? Because like mothballs or something's growing on that at this point. But yeah, so some of the smaller, I guess they're small business owners, similar to us, they replicate these candies. So they had a booth there. And so like, you know, like the dots that I don't know why we ate them, like the sugar dots that
the little pieces that like off. Yeah. And then it would like peel off and you're like eating half paper, half sugar. Right. Yes. I remember those.
Literally they were just dyed sugar. That like now parents like are afraid to give to their children. They had that. They had like candy cigarettes that are like so inappropriate. Like, why did we think that was cute that children walk around smoking candy cigarettes?
I did. And I remember my mom being like, no, this isn't something you want to do. But it's so hard because especially we get candy cigarettes and it's like, here's the thing you do. And now we're in a space and I completely like 1,000% am behind it. You can't smoke in restaurants. You can't do that stuff anymore. But you could go into 90s Con and you can still buy, like, can anybody buy candy cigarettes at 90s Con?
You can. And like, you give them to your children if you want to. But yeah, so they had like things like that. And then fruit striped gum, the one with the zebra and all like the colors. That those looked a little old. I did not buy the fruit stripe.
What about Thrills? Do you remember those?
What were they?
The purple gum?
Yes.
Like you chew it for 30 seconds and then it was like awful?
Yes. Yeah, so they had like different things like that. And then like, you know, there was also people who just had like collectible items, like from like food and beverage. So like McDonald's, like, we were big McDonald's people because it was right around the corner from my house. They would give out those glasses like once a year in the summertime and it would be themed like Garfield. I had all the Garfield ones. And then they had like Simpsons one year. And so someone had all of their like collections on sale and you could buy like these mugs. And I was so tempted to buy them. And I was like, McDonald's used to give these for free and now you're selling them for $75 a glass. I think I'm a pass.
I love it. But
yeah, those are like the cool things. And like, back to what we were saying, like, it's just a different time. It's so funny when you go into 90s con because they're all people that are pretty much Xennials. There's probably some people that have brought their children to kind of experience what we experienced. And then because like the Full House cast was there, so like all these kids who are now watching Fuller House, like they were there to meet them. But everyone is like super friendly. Like you feel like it's back when you did ride your bike around the block. Like everyone's like, you're waiting online. I was waiting online to meet Ryder Strong. Almost had a heart attack because he's so freaking good looking in person. Standing online, talking to all of these women and men around us about like Ryder Strong. And it's like, do you remember when he was on Criminal Minds? Sorry, ladies. Like, they were like, do you remember when he was on Criminal Minds? And I was like, and he was the killer and he had that black hair. And like, everybody's like just chit-chatting about back in the day and like the fun stuff that we did and like the stupid things that we did because of the things that we saw people. Like, I don't know how many Blossom flip hats people were wearing with the big flowers on. Yes. And now they're coming back again, which I think is really cool. I don't know that I could pull it off. I couldn't pull it off then, but I wore them then. I definitely can't pull them off now. But I see kids coming off the school bus and they have them on and I'm like, yeah, rock your Blossom flower hat. And they look at me like, what am I talking about? Who's Blossom? And I'm like, the host of Jeopardy.
Yeah, true. She's now the host of Jeopardy. So Christina, you talked a little bit about the cast of Full House being at 90s Con. So let's talk about consuming media from the past. One of the things that came up in one of our past conversations is your love for a band, a boys pop band. Tell us about that, because I think that's where you and I have a connection.
New Kids on the Block. Yes. So I have seen over 20 New Kids on the Block concerts. I am going this summer to see them again because they are going to be on Long Island. So my best friend and I will be there rocking out, hanging tough, pretending that's what we do. And so I do. I love them. I love to, like, I listen to their older music still. Mm-hmm. Also 98 Degrees and NSYNC. I've gotten to meet them at 90s Con, which is super fun as well. And, you hear the music and you see these people and all of a sudden it brings you back again to like that time. Like you hear some of these songs that I can very clearly picture like where I was the first time, or like walking into Sam Goody to buy the cassette tape of like Hanging. And I do. And I just, there's something about it. Like, even if like, I'm going to say Jonathan Knight, who I think is hilarious because you can totally tell that he's like, I am in my 50s. Why am I still trying to dance and wiggle my butt on this stage? Like when you see him, but at the same time, you don't care because you're dancing and you're having fun. And this is just like incredible. Like, it's just music. Like, my son still will sing, like, some of the NSYNC songs when we listen to, like, the 90s station in the car on Sirius. And he'll start singing the songs, and I'm like, I'm a good mom.
Yeah, I think it's it's true because it ties back to our memories and to our upbringing. And you're absolutely right. Like when you think about that song, where you heard it the first time, what boy did you dance with, what grade were you in? Those are the memories of our childhood. It's interesting to see a lot of these, TV shows coming back from, the 80s and 90s and also the bands, right? And I'm curious to get both your thoughts on like, how long do you think, I think they maybe have another 5 years in them, and after that it's kind of die down a bit if they even have that, but it's definitely a part of our childhood.
I think they can keep going. Like if people are still willing to buy tickets and purchase, like, and they're willing to perform, like there's no reason why they can't. Like, look at bands from the 70s, like Bruce Springsteen, I mentioned, or Rolling Stones, like Mick Jagger. Sure. That man still hasn't aged in all of these years and he still tours. And U2, like one of my dad's favorite bands, like I've seen them a million times as well. And they're not putting out new music, but there is, I think they have that way of playing on that sense of nostalgia that makes people willing to pay. Like, yeah, I'm not going to see Donnie Wahlberg shake his tushy because it's just as cute as it was in 1995 when I saw him. But at the same time, like, I would pay in 5 years if they're touring again and being like, yeah, I'm going to rock out to some new Kids on the Block tonight.
That's
I think it's
awesome.
fascinating. And it's also, I think it gives a lot to the current artists. Like we have a lot of very popular pop artists that, for me, I had a conversation the other day about Taylor Swift, and I'm like, oh, she's got a couple, 5 more years or whatever. But if she wanted to, she could like continue on forever, right? Like Dolly Parton and Reba McEntire, like all of these people have been on stages recently, and it's because the people who are the past people like us, the past generations, still see them as these really important figures inside of our culture. And I think that's important because that's a business. Like we're business owners. So I think about that. And I think about those people being business owners. And New Kids on a Block, that's a business that they're running, right? It's obviously a band, but at the same time, they're still making money. They can still continue to have their lifestyle because they're out there doing awesome things. And they're probably really peaceful with the fact that they're not like selling out 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 stages. They probably have smaller stages. I don't know. I've not been to New Kids on the Block. I don't know anything probably ever, but still.
I watched them at Jones Beach in the 90s, and now I'm watching them in the 2020s in Jones Beach. So I think they're still selling out.
That's great.
You mentioned like Dolly Parton, and like Dolly Parton to people who are in the generations before us, like I am a big fan of Dolly. So she's become this icon, like this person that we all look up to. And that makes me then sit back and wonder, like, will New Kids on the Block be that to like our children? Because that's who we're looking at. We're thinking of them and we're like, wow, and they're keeping performing and we're playing their music still and we're excited to see them. And so like, will Jackson one day be our age and looking and being like, oh wow, remember like, Donnie Wahlberg and Jordan Knight? Like my mom loved them. And it's not that I love them as a child that he's going to remember. He's going to remember like me now going to concerts with Auntie Turtle to see the band play.
I just want to stop there because when we talk about Dolly Parton, and this is my experience, like Dolly Parton means so much to me in my world today because of my upbringing, because every Saturday morning, my mother would be cleaning the house and blasting Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers, right? So she exposed me to that. And for that reason, I am attached to like Dolly Parton, who she is today, and continuously listen to her music. Going back to what you said about Jackson, Christina, like if you're doing that with him, and you're teaching him those values and how important it is, I do think that he will, one day say, hey, oh yeah, that's, New Kids on the Block. And I used to, my mom used to listen to them and all of that. Where I'm concerned is maybe in the generation today where they don't have that attachment. Like, I don't know. I feel like maybe kids of today, and I don't have children, so I'd love to hear from the both of you. Do you think they will be as emotionally attached as we were growing up as kids and value like our upbringing? I know I miss, the days of, like you said, Christina, having barbecues with the neighbors and staying up late till, the sun went down or whatever the case may be, drinking from the hose. And, that was the best water ever. Today, if you see a kid drinking from a hose, you're running to stop them, right? Just because of the world we live in. So do you think that your kids will in 20, 30 years from now feel the same way, just given the world that they're being brought up in? And I think I'm going from a really fun conversation to a serious conversation, but I'd love to get both of your thoughts on that, having children.
I do think about this sometimes too. My friend and I, we talk about it a lot, because we've grown up together. And I don't think they will, honestly. I think there was something very special about the time that we grew up in, that like, whereas social media is like the bane of my existence and also super fun, it killed that for a lot of kids because we have these things like TikTok and like these like, or even just like shopping, like with Amazon Prime, where you get everything 2 days and it's done, that they're always looking for instant gratification. So the moment that next artist drops a song that they don't like, they're on to the next person because there's always going to be someone else for them to watch. The styles, like, you know, people now are all about, like, they're doing more of that, like, fast fashion piece because they're just doing drops, because if they don't, they run out. Whereas for us, like, we had a whole decade, you know, that we still look back upon, that we just had things that were there, and they were the same artist that came out in 1990 was still playing in 1999, and we were still dancing and loving their music. You know, we had nothing. There was not a whole lot of comparison either. Like, my little guy's only finishing first grade, but he still, when we like will walk around the stores, like, he's like, oh, well, so-and-so wears this clothes, or so-and-so knows about that. Like, why don't I do that? And I'm like, because you're not old enough for that. Like, they're all growing up so fast too, because it's just in their face. It's always in their face. I feel like this makes me sound so old, but like, we lived in simpler times. It was easier for us to remain younger longer, and therefore I felt like get better attachments. Like, we grew attached to things that these kids now are just like, what's the next best thing? What's the next best thing? Waiting for the next best thing. So they can, you know, what they flex? Is that what these kids say these days? They're flexing on things.
I don't even know what that means.
Yes, they're flexing. I think definitely there is something that we can instill in the generation that we're influencing. So think our kids, our nieces, our nephews, we can instill in them the importance of like remembering all these things or being attached to something like music. Both of my kids are avid listeners. They have their own Spotify channels. They are ingrained into specific artists because that's what we do. They have their own artists. They have Taylor Swift. They have AJR. They have current artists that they're really important to them. And they ask us to go to those concerts. Now, I don't know if y'all have looked up a ticket to see Taylor Swift recently. It is not in the budget at all. Maybe if you go to like Singapore, I don't know. But I do think that because we are showcasing that, because we are modeling that for these kids, they are finding their own attachments. Now, my kids are teenagers, which means it's time for them to really find those attachments, and we require them to be off a certain screen. They don't have any social media. They have phones, and they talk to their grandparents a lot. So I feel like it's the way that we're modeling things, and the kids that we can affect. I know we can't affect all kids, but I do think it's something like Jackson for Christina, my kids, nieces and nephews for Anne-Marie. Like, we can share with them like how important it is to turn on music and like to go outside and to have a fun time, and sparklers for 4th of July. We are showcasing with them how to not forget about the past, how to be nostalgic, how to create their own nostalgia, because their kids are going to remember Taylor Swift, right? So we are just showing them how to, because we are examples of. And that only happens because we have things that we are nostalgic about. Really love it. Anne-Marie, any other questions, conversation topics you want to go through?
No, I think I want to take the opportunity to thank Christina for joining us today. I think it was a great conversation. We are going to have you back probably right after you go to 90s Con again, or go to a New Kids on the Block concert. I hopefully one day I can join you in New York. I would love to actually. And do they only do 90s Con, or do they do 80s or just 90s?
Just 90s Con, and
Just
now
90s.
They do Christmas Con, which is with all the Hallmark movie stars.
Oh boy.
I have yet to go there, but I need to. Marie is
I
not.
cannot. That's like, okay. Deep down, Marie, that's like my worst nightmare. Like Hallmark movies, I'm so thankful that you like them and that you keep them in. I do not like them.
I love them, and if I get to go to Christmas Con at some point, it sells out like within 15 minutes of it going on sale.
Oh my gosh.
I believe it.
But I need to go at some point.
I believe it. And probably a lot of the actors that'll be there are probably the ones that we grew up with, because a lot of them are in the Hallmark movies.
100%. And that's what it is. You know, it's Lacey Chabert from Party of Five and Danica McKellar from Wonder Years. So it's still all of the people that we grew up with. They're just now our age and doing Hallmark movies. It's just, you know, my dream come true to live in a little Hallmark town.
Amazing, amazing. Well, Christina, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us today. It was an absolute pleasure having you here. To everybody listening, feel free to comment on this podcast episode. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you go to any events, please share them with us. We'd love to see what's going on in our countries, because we have the US and Canada and around the world as well too. And Christina, we will have you back. Thank you so much for your time. And remember to follow us, click subscribe to our podcast, and we will see you on our next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap for this week's episode of Xennial Mindset Show. We hope that you enjoy the deep dive into unique perspectives that defines our generation. A big shout out to our incredible guest Xennials who shared their stories and insights. If you want to stay connected and continue the conversation, please follow us on social media at the Xennial Mindset Show. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Your feedback means the world to us. Join us again next week as we unpack even more captivating topics, unraveling the threads of the Xennial experience. Until then, this is Marie Mack and Amp signing off. Keep embracing the Xennial mindset, and remember, the best is yet to come.